Matthew the lion.
Hello, welcome to my weekly show. I'm that one guy in Sunday school. My name's Carl, and I've got a topic that I found pretty interesting this week. And that would be the first Nephite Christmas. If you might notice, I'm in a little different setting for the next few weeks. The show is going to be in a different studio, and I'm still getting used to that, so if there's a hiccup, just bear with me. But, on to the story. We are all familiar with the story of Mary and Joseph. Needs no explanation. It's great. However, there's a parallel in the Book of Mormon, in 3 Nephi Chapter 1, a story going on at the exact same time. And that would be the story of the Nephites, obviously. Again, I'm sorry for the slight pauses here and there. We're just working through some issues.
Can you hear this? Can you hear this? Okay.
All right. What I want to get to is things we can learn or we can gather from what was going on with the Nephites at the same time Mary and Joseph were traveling to Bethlehem. Now, I'm going to be referencing 2 chapters of the Book of Mormon here, pretty much. Helaman 16, 3 Nephi 1, and maybe a little bit of 3 Nephi Chapter 2. Yeah, a little bit of 3 Nephi Chapter 2. So if you want to open your scriptures and fact check me as I go along, you're more than welcome to do so. Now, it came to pass. That's how every Book of Mormon story begins. But it came to pass, Nephi, who was a prophet at the time, walked out of the land, and his son becomes the successor prophet. His son, Nephi, here offers a prayer that you might say is just like that of Enos, all day long. There's also threats of violence. There's preachings against Christianity. If you remember the video I did a few weeks ago on Is Christianity Stupid? Well, the people were saying Christianity was stupid then. And what are some lessons we can gather from this story? First of all, sometimes we have to wait a long time for blessings. Now, what I'm meaning here is this whole story is about the prophecy of Samuel the Lamanite, that Christ would come in 5 years. And the way the Nephites would know that that had happened is that there would be a day, then a night, and a day, but the night would not be dark. It'd just be like the sun's going to go down and it's still going to be bright. But they had to wait 5 years for that. Some blessings take a while. And you can't imagine how long it must have felt the night before the sign happened, because at this time, there was movements in the Nephites to kill the believers if the sign didn't happen. They set a day, said, if this does not happen by this day, we're going to kill all of you. The night before it came must have been an awful long night, knowing that if it doesn't come, you're dead. This is not unique to the Nephites. Other prophets have experienced this. Joseph Smith had to wait a long time for blessings. After the angel Moroni came, he had 4 more years before he got the plates. Time has to pass. Sometimes God lets that happen for reasons that are in his own mind wise. Prophet Noah, he had to wait a while for the ark to be finished. Many prophets have had to wait a long time for signs to happen. And how does that matter to us? The second coming. We've been waiting for Christ to come again pretty much ever since he left the first time. Like 2,000 years. We could be waiting a while longer, and we should look to these people and see that, some blessings just take a while to come. Now, another key point in this whole thing of waiting for blessings that we learn from this chapter. God does not neglect us. And I'm going to cite a verse to support that here. Bear with me. 3 Nephi 1:4. In the commencement of the 92nd year, the prophecies of the prophets began to be fulfilled more fully, for there began to be greater signs and greater miracles wrought among the people. So there wasn't just a 5-year gap of Samuel's prophecy to the fulfillment. There were little signs in between that sort of hinted at what was going to happen, that gave them faith to press on. And God is loving and gives us those things. We don't have to stress because we get these little tender mercies along the way, which help us have faith that the big final thing is going to come. Now, thirdly, some blessings seem far away in terms of distance and time. The Nephites, there was a lot of them who were wondering, like, well, if this being, Christ, is going to come, why isn't he coming to us? Why is he coming to someplace a million miles away? Why? In fact, in Helaman chapter 16, people say that. It's quoted that the unbelievers said, "It is not reasonable that such a being as a Christ shall come. If so, and he be the Son of God, the Father of heaven and of earth, why will he not show himself unto us as well as unto them who be at Jerusalem?" They didn't get it. These blessings seemed far away. They were believing in a prophecy that was going to happen on the complete opposite side of the globe. For us, some blessings seem far away. This particular instance of geographical distance probably doesn't apply in most cases, but it can. Now, second main lesson from the first Nephite Christmas. We shouldn't expect much cheering on from the world as we go about our lives as Christians, hoping for these signs, hoping for fulfillment of prophecies, trying to live the commandments. We are not going to get any encouragement, zilch, from the world. Believers in this time in the Nephites, they were the minority. They're in a way, they're a lot similar to us today. We, as Christians, are the minority in society. We used to be the moral majority. The days are gone. We're the minority now. And this is the case in this time, according to Helaman 16, verse 10. The last part of the verse says, "The more part of the people remaining in their pride and wickedness, and the lesser part walking more circumspectly before God." This was the lesser part of the people. Now, and from that point on, I'm sure the amount of believers diminished, because it usually does over time. By the time of the Nephite Christmas or whatever, when the sign really does happen, these believers are a very small number. In fact, so small that the unbelievers seemed confident that they could exterminate them when the time came. This is not unique to this situation. After Christ came in the old world, in Jerusalem, there was persecution. Jesus was obviously killed. The apostles were pretty much all executed at some point. In the Roman Empire, there was immense persecution of Christians before Constantine came into power. This has happened even in modern days. Think about Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith, killed for their beliefs. Think about the clashes in Missouri. Satan is vicious, and he is completely devoted to killing us, destroying us. There's a verse in the book of John, I want to say chapter 10, maybe verse 10. "The thief cometh not but for to steal, kill, and destroy." Satan is after us, and it's not a fun lesson to think about, but the opposition in these verses, in 3 Nephi 1, where they want to kill Christians, the same being who gave them that idea is still at work today. Obviously, where I'm broadcasting from, the United States of America, I'm not going to be killed for being a Christian. But the same being, the adversary, the devil, is still there, and he's eventually probably going to try to bring that back. Killing off Christians is a tactic he's used repeatedly, and it could come back one day. Another small thing. When these bad things were happening, God didn't intervene immediately. These threats of death for believing happened, and the assurance that they would be saved didn't come until the night before the sign happened. So, what happened is, there's this day that they're going to be killed, and the prophet Nephi, who's the son of the other Nephi, he prayed. He went down and he prayed, according to verse 12, 3 Nephi 1:12. He cried mightily unto the Lord all that day. This is like Enos. He prayed the whole day, and the voice of the Lord came unto him. That tomorrow the sign would come. I'm sure Nephi had faith that it was going to come, but the reassurance didn't come immediately. And you know what that's similar to? Doctrine and Covenants, section 121, where Joseph Smith asked the question, "Oh God, where art thou?" Kind of like, where's this whole deliverance thing? Well, I think it's fair to say Nephi probably was asking the same kind of question. And God answered, as he always does. Now, another thing, we need to trust the prophet. Period. Nephi was the prophet at this time, and the revelation came directly to him in the voice of the Lord. And we got to remember, we have a prophet today that can receive that exact same kind of revelation. Now, how can we trust the prophet? It's because that he is a direct line of communication to God, and in this case, we see it's direct, voice to voice. He spoke to God, and God spoke back in a voice. And he is obviously not the only prophet in the scriptures to lead the people to safety. Think about Elijah or Elisha, the full phrase, they that be with us are more that be with them. Prophets have long faced persecution, and we can trust that through God's help, we'll get through it, and he'll lead us. Now, my last point, and this one may take a bit longer, we're under 10 minutes already, but the devil never gives up, and I have a lot of subpoints to this. The devil never quits trying to dissuade us. He'll hit us with one temptation, then when we blow that one off, he makes up a new one, then a new one, then a new one. We're never going to get to a point where there's just no more temptation. Now, to analyze this is where 3 Nephi 2. So all three of these chapters come in, a little bit. So at first, a couple of years before that sign happened, the Nephites were saying, the unbelieving Nephites anyways, that according to Helaman 16:18, it's not reasonable that Christ should come. We believe that is a wicked tradition. And they said in verse 16, some things they may have guessed right, among so many. But behold, we know that these great and marvelous works cannot come to pass, of which has been spoken. A couple years beforehand, the Nephites were saying, okay, so you got these little things right, but the big one, no, it's not happening. It's not happening, and this whole thing is nonsense. It's not reasonable. It doesn't make sense. Those were the lies Satan gave a couple of years before. When the sign gets closer, the sign happens afterward, well, obviously that temptation throws out the window, because the whole thing of it can't happen. Well, it just did happen. Full proof, right? You'd think everyone should believe. Well, most people did, but not quite everybody. In fact, after the sign happened, go to 3 Nephi 1, verse 22. It came to pass that from this time forth there began to be lyings sent forth among the people by Satan. Immediately after the sign comes, the adversary's forces are at work to discredit it. If it is going to happen, all right, well, we're going to tell lies about it. We're going to try to make people not care about it. It says, these lies by Satan, quote, to harden their hearts, to the intent that they might not believe in those signs and wonders which they have seen. This is a tactic switch. Satan does this, When one prophecy is off in the future, you'll say that's not going to happen. Then when it does happen, you'll say, oh, well, that didn't really matter. Think about some parallels to this. Any time an archaeologist might find evidence for the Book of Mormon, members, people that hate the church are going to say, okay, well, you got that one right, but it's still not true. So think about when the Book of Mormon was published, people would say, okay, this is complete nonsense. There's no evidence for this. It's all right, well, now if there is a little bit of evidence, they say, well, that's not enough. It's switching the goalposts, I guess, is kind of the worldly term. They keep changing their arguments. And this is all done by Satan. Now, chapter 2, it goes on. He switches tactics, at least kind of switches, again. Verse 2, the Nephites, imagining up some vain thing in their hearts that it was wrought by man and by the power of the devil, to lead away and deceive the hearts of the people, insomuch that he did blind their eyes, and led them away to believe that the doctrine of Christ was a foolish and a vain thing. If Satan can't convince you that the gospel's not true, he'll say it doesn't matter. If you think it does matter, then he'll say it's stupid, it's foolish, it's vain. Forget about it. Do we not hear that argument today? all the time. People are constantly saying religion is stupid, it doesn't explain how the world works. Science contradicts it. Religion it's not for the 2019. People say that. On the college where I go to, it's not an overly religiously friendly environment. I mean, there's some Christians there. Obviously, I did a video a week or two ago about that, but the world, it's still using this argument. This is not a new one. It's 2,000 years ago, Satan was telling us that Christianity was stupid, that it was foolish and vain, and we still hear it. Another tactic he's using here is saying the devil
Email
did
from
it,
Stitch
which is
Fix.
ironic because the devil's trying to say, oh, God didn't do that, I did that, which is weird, but it apparently works on some people. Led them to believe that it's all of the devil, and how can we bust through that? How can we bust through that temptation? I would say go to Moroni, or is that Mormon, where he says, if anything inviteth and enticeth to do good, it's of God. If it's trying to get you to believe in Christ, it's from God. So even if something really weird happens, if it's getting us to believe in God and be Christian and be towards Christ, it's from God, it's not the devil. So that little thing is busted. Now, those are my lessons, I guess. Here's a little bonus thing. I've heard someone argue that the Book of Mormon is for abortion, that it's pro-choice is the nonsensical term, I guess. And it's kind of based on 3 Nephi 1, and I find this argument to be completely, utterly wrong, to be blunt. And I think it's based on people saying, well, if the spirit hasn't entered the body of the fetus, the baby, it's not a spiritual being, we can kill it. And they're saying it doesn't until birth because Jesus is speaking here even though he should have already been in the womb. I guess their argument is, based on what I've heard, well, if Jesus had already come into heaven, into Mary's womb, how is he speaking to Nephi here? And I'm just going to say, because he's God and can do whatever he wants. Okay? This is not just anybody. This is Jehovah, the God of the Old Testament, and he's more than capable of communicating to a prophet while, I guess, also being in Mary's womb. Either way, I don't find that argument to hold any water. The Book of Mormon is not pro-choice, at least. Nowhere have I seen evidence of that. And I am certainly glad that a young woman in ancient Israel who had an unwanted pregnancy did not choose to end it. I'm going to leave you off a little bit short today. Hopefully it's short and sweet. I hope you liked it. These are my lessons from the first Nephite Christmas. Now, for our Christmas, let's go apply it. Let's trust the prophet. Let's keep in mind that our adversary doesn't give up. And let's not listen to the uproar of nonsense that the unbelievers throw at us. Thank you so much for watching. I am that one guy in Sunday school, and I will be back next week at 5:15 Eastern Time. Goodbye.